was to get a bridge from the Russia territory over to the Kerch Strait and onto Crimea, which was an incredible feat. A massive operation with time being of the essence. The arch of the railway section weighs more than 6,000 tons. The arch was placed on the floating system and left for the Kerch Strait on August 27th, 28th of 2017. The length of each span is almost 744 feet, and the highest part of the arch is more than 260 feet off the water surface. However, despite its size, there are now larger Ukrainian ships that are stuck being unable to pass under the short bridge, which was likely an intentional move by the Russians. Regardless, it was an engineering feat like no other, with an incredible amount of planning. When the bridge was opened, Putin himself was the first to drive across it, from Russia to Crimea. Imagine an 800,000-pound piece of nuclear equipment being moved through California during the night. And that is what happened when the retired steam generator was moved from Temecula and passed through Riverside County on its way to a disposal site about 75 miles west of Salt Lake City. Because of the immense weight and the 16 feet high load, it had to be taken off major roads and moved on side streets. The 400-foot-long truck that moved the generator took up 2 lanes of traffic and could only move 25 miles per hour maximum. The combined weight of the 192-wheel transport trailer and its cargo weighed a staggering 1.5 million pounds. The biggest challenge was the 90-degree turns, and each one took 45 minutes to 1.5 hours to make a single turn. This is another amazing construction marvel of a building being transported to a new spot. The Zhangguenge Building is a 6-story warehouse in Shanghai that was designed by British architect George Wilson and constructed in the 1930s. The building was shifted 125 feet, 38 meters to accommodate local redevelopment. It's pretty incredible to see a 3-story building being slid across a set of rails. But the move went as planned, and the historic building was moved and saved. Okay, so this giant piece of machinery isn't really being transported, and it was learned that it would be cheaper to move this thing on its own without dismantling it. But like most of the other giant things that were moved without some problem, the Bagger 288, which is a bucket wheel excavator, and the biggest single piece of machinery in the entire world, it's so large that it actually needs 5 operators. It stands 333 feet tall and is the length of 2 football fields. And in 2011, the giant excavator needed to move from one mine to another that was 14 miles away. Doesn't sound too far, but it took over 33 weeks to reach its destination. The world has some really big pieces of machinery out there. You've got your ships, mining equipment, nuclear reactors, submarines, and the giant oil rigs to name a few. Sometimes this stuff has to be moved to different locations for whatever reasons. This is where precise planning and careful operation must be made. One small wrong move, and you could have a disaster on your hands. Want to see some really incredible and huge pieces of machinery moved around that you would think impossible? How about moving an entire building? Well, sit back, relax, and enjoy. At the top of our list is an incredible and a super crazy piece of machine that obviously has some state-of-the-art innovation. A company called Ale has developed what is called the MegaJack system, and it can be put into containers and shipped and constructed in just 2 weeks. But the most amazing thing done with the system will blow you away. Jacks can be scary things sometimes, especially if they fail, but the MegaJack system was put into use and it lifted an entire oil rig, weighing 42,780 tons. The rig was the Exxon Naftogaz Limited at the shipyard of Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering Company Limited in South Korea. It was the heaviest jack-up operation in the world. The MegaJack was configured in 4 sets of towers, with each one being made up of 3 separate towers each. This gave each of the 4 towers a capacity of 15,000 tons and an overall jacking capacity of 60,000 tons. It took 11 hours to complete the lift, in which the topside was put on a barge and sent to its drilling location in the Arkutun Dagi field off the east coast of Russia. You probably heard of someone moving a house, and it's actually something that's done frequently. However, moving an entire hotel is a completely different story. The hotel was the historic Fairmont Hotel in San Antonio, which was built clear back in 1906. Now you're probably wondering why anyone would want to move a 1,650-ton brick building. However, even though the building was vacant for years, it was in nearly the exact same condition that it was when it was built, and some of the people of San Antonio wanted to save this piece of heritage. The move took 6 days and began on March 30th, 1985, and captivated the entire city because of how big the project was, literally. The people who took the job was an Oregon-based specialized heavy hauling company called Emmert International, and San Antonio's Alamo Architects also helped in the planning. Many people actually said that it couldn't be done. The furnishings were removed, windows boarded, and the entire structure was lifted onto 36 hydraulic dollies and trussed with bands of steel. By the time it was ready to move, it had become a brick-and-mortar shell and had to cross a highway, railway, and even a river at a slow crawl of 33 feet per minute and cost almost $9 million. So, how do you ship an $8.8 billion telescope? Very carefully. In 2014, the James Webb Telescope had to be put together from pieces that were all scattered across the United States. The shipping container was so large for some of the pieces that they were barely squeezed aboard a U.S. Air Force C-5 cargo plane. It's hard to imagine a plane powerful enough to move such a large piece of cargo, but the plane managed. The telescope is a large composite structure that holds and supports Webb's hexagonal mirrors and instruments, and enclosed a 21-foot diameter mirror, and the optics and instruments together weighed 5,300 pounds. The C-5 then headed to NASA Goddard Space Center, where it was moved into a clean room and opened in preparation for testing. This telescope is set to go into space on March 30th, 2021, and is going to really open up exploration of the universe. A Saudi company had the job of transporting a 1,048-ton nuclear reactor through 683 miles of steep desert hills. It was carried on 2 hydraulic trailers and 10 prime movers. There were 6 trucks in the front of this thing pulling it, and 4 trucks behind it pushing at the same time. The move would then switch to 4 trucks in the front pulling, and 6 pushing the nuclear reactor, which you would think would have taken some clever communication to get everyone on the same page. However, the trucks and trailers were all connected mechanically, which of course increased the traction and braking capacity. Super luxury mega yachts. Everyone would like to have one, including me. But the thing is, you better know which body of water you want it in, because moving one of these things can be a real transportation nightmare, depending on where you're going. Enter the 331 super yacht, aptly named Symphony, which had to be moved through some Dutch canals, and everyone near got quite a show. Adjustments to locks and bridges had to be made. Load carriers and pontoons were also on hand to raise the yacht higher out of the water, otherwise it would have hit bottom. The boat was being moved from the Royal Van Lent shipyard, where it was built, to the port of Rotterdam. It took 2 full days to navigate the enormous ship through the narrow Dutch canals, which was supported by huge I-beams and wooden boards. It was moved with a cable and pulley system on the dollies, which had a total of 288 tires. A crane was used for some torque, and 6 fully loaded dump trucks with gravel for stability. The job took 132 hours and about 300 workers, and the hotel still sits in the spot it was moved to today. Submarines are huge, a lot bigger than they seem in photographs and videos than they are in real life. That's why it was such a surprise to see not only 1, but 2 Akula II-class submarines, the K-391 Bratsk and the K-295 Samara, loaded onto one ship, which is a giant semi-submerged vessel named Transshelf, which is owned by the Dutch Dockwise. Once the 2 subs were aboard the vessel, she sailed to the Zvezdoka plant in Severodvinsk along the northern sea route. The reason for loading them onto a ship was to replace obsolete armament, radio electronics, and hydroacoustic systems with more up-to-date equipment. This was the world's first operation to carry 2 atomic submarines at the same time, with a National Geographic documentary following. Wind turbines are some pretty incredible machines, and there are many different sizes. However, the blade for this wind turbine measures a staggering 290 feet long and almost 15 feet high. And of course, the blades for this massive wind machine had to be transported, which is no small feat, considering there isn't a flatbed truck long enough to make such turns. In fact, the move was a world record attempt, and the planning to move the blade actually began 1 year before it happened. The awesome thing is that the move went 100% as planned. Some of you may remember NASA's Space Shuttle program, which had a decent run and was retired in 2011. The Endeavour was one of these flying marvels and ended up heading to a museum. The amazing thing is that the Endeavour weighs 155,000 pounds and was loaded onto a multi-wheel dolly and pulled by a single Toyota Tundra. That's impressive! The journey took 3 days and many people went out to capture its move and take a lot of photos, as it was powerful to see the excitement on people's faces as the pride of the United States space program made its final mission to the museum. The first thing that Russia had to do after it illegally annexed the Crimean Peninsula